Hello and welcome to the full crew. I'm your host, Mike Pehel, and we've got some great guests today. I'm going to start in order of alphabetical. We've got Toni Drummond. Toni, can you tell us a little bit about
Hey.
yourself?
Yes, my name is Toni Drummond. I own Global Aerial Management Group, which is an emerging technologies company. And I'm also the owner of Prestige Air Group, which is a Part 135 aircraft management and charter company based in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Toni. And we also have Sally French.
Hi, I'm creator of the dronegirl.com, a website all about online news, reviews, a great community. Check out my stuff on dronegirl.com.
And we also have Ramon Roche from the Dronecode Foundation. So, Ramon?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Tony, Sally. I'm a general manager for the Dronecode Foundation, and I'm really excited to be here with Tony and Sally.
Yeah, and I've been hanging out with Ramon a lot lately. We just got done with the PX4 summit, and we've got some cool clips from that. We'll show a little bit later. So we're gonna start off with Sally's article. Sally, you want to take it from here?
Yes, well, I love, all this proliferation of drone fireworks. So NPR sort of did this roundup of the concept that swarms of drones have been replacing fireworks coming off of 4th of July, where I'm sure we saw a lot of fireworks. I feel like this is really timely. And, this is something that we've been talking about for so long, all the way back when Intel was doing their, at the time, very simple drone light shows where it would be like 40 drones, and now we have hundreds of drones in the sky. And I think this story resonated with me for two reasons. One is because I live in San Francisco and fireworks are going off all the time and are super loud, and everyone in the little neighborhood next doors and Facebook groups is complaining about them. And also, wildfire season is becoming more and more of a threat always in California. And so to think of something like fireworks being not necessary anymore because we have drones, and that mitigates some risk of fireworks, I think is really important. But secondly, I'm just seeing drone light shows everywhere. I live in San Francisco, and our Alameda County Fair, they are doing a drone light show. I just saw a video this morning about Disneyland Paris doing an awesome drone light show. And so it seems like something that more and more people are getting exposed to. And Ramon, I know that you exposed a bunch of people in Austin to some drone light shows.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
we got
that's
the
right.
clip of
So
that.
we had a drone light show on day one. It was a very short one, with only 8 minutes, but it was in downtown Austin, and it was amazing. It was the first time I actually saw a drone light show, and I was blown away. Even though I knew it was happening, and I put together the storyboard for it, just seeing it live, I don't know, it was amazing. It was incredible experience. I recommend it to anyone. And I'm completely agree with you, Sally. Like, why do we need fireworks anymore? And surprisingly, I was talking about this with some of the companies that are making the drone light shows, and they were saying that in controlled scenarios, when there's fireworks and drones at the same time, it's even better. It augments the experience. But I still have my reservations, especially with the fire season happening in California, and also, like, there's reveal parties with fireworks now, and like, why do we need to have that? I don't see the point anymore, and especially with drones. What I was gonna say though, it's like the economics of a drone light show is drastically different from a fireworks show, and but I don't know exactly if the price difference, but because I've never done a fireworks show, but we have done a drone light show, and I know more or less how much they go by, and they're, I guess, not as economical as the fireworks, I'm going to say, but I don't know exactly how much a fireworks show costs these days. And I think that's one of the holdouts for more adoption for the drone light shows.
Toni, have you been able to witness a drone light show before or no?
Yes, actually, I wanted to bring up, I was way before I even was into drones. I was, I think it was 2017, maybe it was 2018. I was here in Arizona visiting before I lived here, and I went to see a drone light show at a hotel, the Savannah Resort, and it was the first time I saw it. And you know what? I'll be honest, I wasn't sure what this again before I was in drones. I wasn't sure what the crowd was going to experience, but it was literally quiet and everybody was in awe, looking up, just completely taken back. And so for me here, again, as to Sally's point, I live here now in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we are, I mean, literally, if you drag a chain, it's going to hit a spark and it's going to set the whole desert on fire. So it's not even there's people that still sell fireworks here, but it is so taboo. People are driving down the street, like, picketing, don't sell the fireworks. So I personally think the experience is going to change the lifestyle that we live. I also wanted to bring up that drone, let's just move away from the fireworks part. Let's talk about the advertising that it brings. Let's talk about when I was at CES this year, and we had Dragonfly actually, and we actually had the Drone Racing League. So they did some type of light show during that time. I believe it was either that time, or I'm in Vegas a lot. Could have been a time right after that. But my point was, it now is setting the stage of whatever it is, that brand or whatever they're advertising is there. And you're looking up at the sky, and again, it's grabbing your attention. And my third point, the most important point, community acceptance. Drone light shows are helping the public believe, look, these are drones. They're here to help us. They're not here to harm us. Look, they're fabulous. And again, our biggest issue when it comes to UAS and different types of tech is absorption and the community accepting it. So I am a huge fan of it. I've experienced it. Thank you guys so much for putting the time into the development of it. And I think it's a great article.
Yeah, and I always feel like the two top concerns people say to me is, drones flying over people, and then how do the drones not crash into each other? And I know, like, largely the light shows are not necessarily over people, often they're over water, but still kind of this concept of drones flying around people is sort of mitigated. And then, of course, totally proving how do the drones not crash into each other. The drone light shows more than anything, and that's something that's such a concern when it comes to delivery. People wonder how do two drones delivering to two different neighbors' houses not crash into each other. And I think better than anything, the drone light shows are what proves that the technology works.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that you're able to orchestrate hundreds of drones at this point. And one of the things that makes it separate and unique from fireworks, it's nice that we're reducing noise, we're reducing combustibility, liability there. I think those things are almost immediately apparent if you put a little thought into it. But what's so cool when you actually experience it is the dimensionality. Like, I think in the clip we had, we actually saw it was like an AAM rotating. And there was another one from that specific light show, because I was there, where it was a laptop opening and spinning. And that's when you realize this, not only is this a replacement, but it's also better. And that
so much better.
That extra like mile of now it's in 3D space. I think we've only begun to see what you can do with these things, and it's a brand new art form, and that's kind of cool to have seen that.
You brought up the shows that combine fireworks and drones, and I wish that I was more prepared and had the video I saw of the Disneyland Paris drone show, because they actually do combine drones and fireworks, and the drones are so neat and create these perfect shapes that you can tell exactly what it is. That's the Spider-Man logo, that's the Avengers logo, and then they have these fireworks in the background, and they're just creating this smoke everywhere, and then you can barely even see the logo from the drones because there's fireworks smokes. It's like, just get rid of the fireworks. Keep the drones only.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how many drones you have on the light show, you can make so many different shapes. And like a part of the group of the swarm could be making the main shape, and then while the other part is preparing for the next one, and they can sort of transition from one to the other. Because if it's dark enough, you're not going to see the drones that are turned off from the sky. So they got space for a lot of creativity there. And to your point before about how they not crash into each other, like that's a huge technical issue right now. Like the whole architecture behind the swarm is actually a really complex scenario right now. It's not as easy as like, oh yeah, I'm going to put together a few drones and I'm just going to take off and try to do it on my own. It's still not there anymore yet, but I can tell you like they're flying with RTK GPS, and they're at least 1.5 meters separated from each other. So you get these immense grids. So before you take off, you actually need to look for the site where you're going to be able to operate them from. So in Austin, for us, we actually had to move a location twice of where we were going to set up. because we couldn't get permission to set it up first. And second, we didn't get enough space to do so because there were 300 drones and we needed a field like 400 meters wide enough to be able to put all of the drones. So there's operators in the field placing a drone a meter apart from each other, and then turning them on, each one of them. So it's a huge taxing operation still. It's a lot of manual steps, but once it's in the sky, it's amazing and it's beautiful. And I do foresee this going in a different direction. Yes, we have like the animations and stuff, but think of like bird swarms, like how they're moving and doing these natural motions. I fully foresee this happening soon with drones. Like you're gonna be able to see them move around, not just being static in one axis. And yes, they're rotating and stuff, but they're gonna actually be moving now. And that, I think that's the next step.
Yeah, you used the word drone swarm, which is actually contentious among the Twitter dronerati right now, because specifically like swarming would be the type of coordination that you were talking about, like in terms of if you were like making them for a movie, like you know, a group of fish or birds in the sky, they call them boids. That's a whole other level of coordination and deconfliction on the drone level, whereas like the way that this is orchestrated now, the drone knows exactly where it is, and there's less of its awareness in play on where the drone next to it is. But once you get to that level, you could get to really, really artistic kind of forms in the sky that you know, you could recreate a cyclone, but with pretty lights. So that's just get your creative side thinking, your imagination going. We've only begun to see what this technology can do. All right.
I have one last question
sure.
before we move on. Does anybody know, and I'm not sure if either one of you guys, how many people does it take to get a drone show like that and that size that you did in Austin, Ramon? How many actual humans did it take to get that going on site that day?
Yeah, I wasn't there with them, but I think there's
Okay.
around 5 people.
Okay, see, I would have assumed you would need a bigger staff than that. So 5 people to manage that is not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's according to the pictures I saw of the team putting it together, and there might be more,
Okay.
but I think there was only 5. I saw the people putting the drones on the floor and then setting up everything, so I think it was 5. And I think the most important thing about the drone light show, and it's something that we might talk about in the next articles, is about getting the airspace to be able to operate on drone light shows. I think that's the biggest part out of the whole show. The operation is just making sure you get permission to use the airspace, and that's one of the restrictions and why it's locked to such a short time frame.
I see Toni's taking notes. she's
I did.
She's got a drone show in her future. So
I'm doing my next talk on airspace, so I want to throw that in there.
Go for it. So next article is actually yours, Toni. You want to talk to us a little bit about these chemotherapy drone deliveries?
Yes. So I have a very huge passion. I got my start in UAS by actually using private jets. We were transporting hearts and lungs using a special machine that keeps the blood flowing through the heart and lungs. So during the nights when I was up tracking airplanes, making sure body parts were getting where they need to, organs, I started doing research, and what would happen was I would end up, the organ would get to where it's going, and then we would kind of lose track of it once it got on the ground. So my original view of where I saw this medically was really wide. And so to see this article, it really captured me. So it captured me for 2 reasons. Number one, where they're using this technology right now, obviously it's hard to reach places. So obviously we know companies like Swoop Aero and those type, even Zipline, those are companies that are doing a lot of medical delivery. So there's a few reasons why I believe medical delivery is super, obviously the visual that you see here of moving the medicines and moving, in this case, the chemotherapies to the patients that may not have access to it via vehicle. You have that situation, but there's also, the other situations coming involved when you have, you're starting to use the technology that could now figure out where it is from point A to point B. With a drone, we're easily able to track the medicine straight through. So I find this, I know you guys had mission go on a while back, and they've actually moved organs, one or two already. And I find this as the next wave of what we're doing to help. Number one, again, I'm a big on community awareness. If we're able to get drones approved to help the public, whether it's public safety, community health, that type of thing, it's going to help us get access to the airspace easier. It's going to help us get access to the things that we need to be able to use the airspace properly as we see fit. So this was a really exciting one for me, you guys.
Yeah, once you get a corridor set up, right, and you can consistently run these missions, you're basically quantitatively saving tens, hundreds of lives over the course of a year, right? And that's
Yes.
kind of amazing to think about. Because if you look at these lists and how hard it is to get an organ, you could really tolerate zero failure in
Right.
the
And
delivery process.
And the other thing is, when we talk about moving chemotherapy and we talk about moving medicines, that's just the beginning. The next thing we are going to be moving is organs. So we need to move the chemotherapies. We need to move the organs. I know, like I said, there's other companies like Mission Go that are working on the sensors that can keep track of the organ inside of the capsule or whatever it is that you're carrying it in. That's huge to be able to do that. Will we be able to move a heart via drone tomorrow? No. But in the next 10 years, yes, we will. If you asked anybody 10 years ago, would you be able to put a heart in a machine that kept the blood pumping through it while you were, while it's actually essentially still alive as opposed to being frozen? People would have said absolutely not. So the technology is now providing us different ways for life-saving, all different types of life-saving techniques that are coming in by using autonomous technologies and using drones and tech itself. So we talk about, all of these other fun little things that we're going to be doing to create, like the fireworks. That's great, and I think it's important. These are all important factors, but when you talk about saving human lives, that's a whole different animal. So real exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Ramon, I think it was a couple of years ago, they were doing some trials for medical deliveries in Switzerland. What happened to that? Did that kind of just disappear off the map, or?
I'm sorry, you cut off a little bit when you said the location.
Oh, Switzerland, because I remember they were kind of
Switzerland.
they were trafficking them across, I think, the bay in Zurich or something to that degree.
Yeah,
as the test.
that was a trial, wasn't it? I think that was a trial,
Yeah.
and I think it ended.
So
But I don't know that it went anywhere unless they're really quiet about it. But I think, as far as I remember, they were a short trial and it was successful, but I never heard about them anymore. And I want to talk about deliveries a little bit too, because I love the fact that drones are being used for good. And I think Toni was talking about before in the last article about normalization of drones and how we use them to save lives, and how do we the global perception of what this technology can bring to the table. Yes, we got drone light shows and they're amazing, but actually being able to use them out there and have a benefit and have it being transparent, completely autonomous, you don't need to even think about it. I think that's the important part about autonomy and robotics in general, is where they're so efficient that you're not actually thinking about that part of the process anymore. And I think this is one of the first steps that we need to do, trust them enough to be able to deliver critical deliveries. And I'm struggling not to say the wrong words here, but I just want to make sure, the critical delivery part is amazing to me. And I think that's one of the things that is amazing seeing in drones. I think 10 years ago, we were talking about deliveries. We're talking about all these amazing potentials of drones. And now finally, we're starting to see them happening. And I'm out of words for that, because that is what we've been working for the last decade. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And Sally, when you got into the drone industry, was this even on your radar as something that we would be doing, or?
Yeah, I mean, I started in the drone industry in early 2013, and that was just before Jeff Bezos made his announcement that sort of shocked the world that he was going to do deliveries via drone. And no one had really talked about drone deliveries until Jeff Bezos did that fateful, I think it was Black Friday of 2013. And, it is really interesting that, he kind of promised you'll have your shoes ordered from Amazon delivered in an hour. And, a lot of people were sort of like, do you seriously need shoes delivered in an hour via an Amazon drone? Like, can you just go to the
There's
store
some
and
people
get it?
that do.
Yeah, yeah. And, it is interesting. And I think about this a lot. A lot of these drone delivery companies are doing pizza deliveries right now. And some people sort of joke about that, but the reality is if you screw up the pizza order, no one's hurt by that. And so it is great to test on those things. And I don't really think it's a bad thing. I do get nervous that some people sort of overhype drone pizza delivery as like the savior of the world, because it's not. But I do see drone pizza deliveries as an excellent test of drone delivery in general. But I think what's great about this chemotherapy piece is that now we are sort of in that next step of we are making deliveries of things that are truly useful, truly meaningful, and truly saving lives so much more than a pizza delivery might.
Yeah, and well, even on a less critical kind of, I guess, forefront, we've seen Drone Up with their Walmart drones, right? With the basic idea being that because these flights have to happen within visual line of sight, they're happening within 1 mile, but mostly what they're going to be used for, if you're thinking about Walmart, is prescription filling, right? So for people that it's actually a hard task to get to the store that's within a mile. That seems, if you're an able-bodied person, hard to kind of conceive, but many people in their later years in life or have critical conditions or injuries that have hit them kind of suddenly, that's a lifesaver. And it's also, it makes you less of a burden on your family members or friends where they would have to go pick it up for you, or even delivery systems where they'd have to spend extra time. So I think we're only beginning to see what is like a solidified drone delivery use case, rather than a pie in the sky. We'll be delivering shoes to people within a half hour, right? We'll eventually get there, I suppose, but the kind of more necessary use cases are the ones that are actually thriving right now.
Yeah, I want to say that building on what Sally was saying about BF Bezos announcing that he was going to do drone delivery, and I completely agree with Sally's comment about, who was going to need that back then? But after a decade and after the pandemic, I think those 2 years really accelerated the process of how we consume things and how we expect things to work. And now we are more accepting to getting deliveries to whatever means possible. And now that we're getting so many things shipped to our home, I don't know about you, but I don't go grocery shopping anymore. Like, I just go to X store and online and just get my stuff delivered. And now just think about that shift in perception for like all over in the world. It's just accelerating deliveries and accelerating all of the logistics process. And just think about all the vans driving around, just driving like Amazon boxes, and just think about all the waste that's happening and all the damage to the environment that we're making by having more of the deliveries happening right now, where if we can find a better way to do that, I think I'm all about that. And to Mike's point, yes, it's great, especially for that minority communities that don't really get to go and buy their stuff, and now they get access to get their stuff delivered home, and they're not aborting anymore to anyone. They don't feel like they can be responsible for themselves, and I think that's very empowering, and I'm totally for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got to take a quick break to thank our sponsors of this episode. I'd like to thank Vodix, who's sponsored, and they're actually Ed Bucas, their CEO, is going to be on Full Tilt tomorrow, so you could check that out. And actually, we also have the Dronecode Foundation, so thank you, Ramon and the Dronecode Foundation, for sponsoring the full crew. If you don't know what the Dronecode Foundation is, basically it supports the governance and infrastructure and services for all the open source drone software and hardware projects out there. Basically, if you are using PX4 or using just even a piece of that code for your drone hardware, you probably should be thinking about supporting the Dronecode Foundation, or at least participating in the community more. If you think about it, you can only engineer so much with your team, and if you're actually participating in the community of great engineers across the PX4 ecosystem, that co-opetition is going to give you access to some of the best engineering talent. And for, drone features and use cases that are so basic that you shouldn't have to build them from the ground up, your participation and support of the community actually makes it easier for the entire drone ecosystem to advance even faster. So if you haven't heard of the Dronecode Foundation and you're just playing around in PX4 or Mavlink or Q Ground Control, maybe it's time to give them a look and see how you could participate even more in the development of open standards and open source technology within the drone ecosystem. So once again, thank you to the Dronecode Foundation for their support of Full Crew. Next article we're going to hit up is actually mine. So I've been kind of talking about a shift in perception of technology and also venture capital for technology brands, and how I think there's going to be a cataclysmic shift in how tech is grown, advanced, and built over the next couple of years. And I think it all starts with consumer acceptance, right? So why do people feel so little love for Uber's brand? Recent study by MBLM basically put Uber almost near the bottom of not only tech, but just brand affinity, period. Which is interesting because we all use it. It almost feels like using a cigarette right now. And what changed fundamentally for Uber is essentially now without funding backing them, and the fact that they actually have to try to be profitable, and also the pandemic shift how people were using the application. Suddenly the price is skyrocketing, and it doesn't feel so good to call that Uber when you're paying 20% more than what a taxi would. So yes, it is convenient, but no, it's no longer as good at the price. And also Uber just doesn't have a great brand reputation from kind of other ancillary behaviors. But I'm curious what everybody else kind of thinks about what this means in tech. I'd actually also like to throw Airbnb in there, because I recently had my first terrible stay at an Airbnb in Miami. Seems like there's over expansion there, and I don't want to go back to hotels, but at the same time, the stay was so awful that if I have a second one, I might just go back to hotels. So what's everybody's feeling on the shift in perception in tech, and just where they see things going with the once favorite apps? Sally, I'll call on you first.
I'm so glad you brought up this article, especially because it doesn't touch on drones specifically, but it is an excellent warning sign for the drone industry. I think the one thing that stands out to me the most of anything is the pricing structure. And Uber got all of these people in because it was so cheap. Even in San Francisco, I've found at least, 5 years ago, it was sometimes cheaper to take an Uber than for two people to pay for a BART, which is our basically subway system. And so we totally got sucked into Uber because it was so cheap. And now they raise prices, and now the trains aren't as good. So I still want to use Uber, but it's way too expensive. And, coming off of our past article, we were talking about drone delivery. Is I do really want the drone industry to be cautious about how we're pricing drone delivery. And so, you mentioned the Walmart drone up tests, and Walmart is offering their drone deliveries for a fixed fee of $3.99. Wing, which is the Google sister company, their fees vary by location, but often their fees are free. And I do sort of get nervous that we are training people that drone deliveries will be cheap or free. And I don't want the drone industry to do the same thing where we hook all these people in saying you'll get your prescription for $3.99 or for free. And then suddenly 10 years from now, we decide actually it's going to be $100 for this delivery, or, whatever it is, even $20. And I don't want people to get upset the same way that they got upset at Uber for raising prices.
Yeah, well, that's the story of the disruptive, technology venture capital model. Basically, they would favor user acquisition over everything else. So if you have to drive the price down, I remember actually in one of my failed startups, there are many, there was a comment from one of the founders who said, well, maybe we could pay people at first. And this was like a box delivery startup. I'm like, so we're going to pay people to send people stuff. That's a good one. That is a new business model if I've ever heard one.
Wow.
But, you know, he was getting educated in business schools where they were actually teaching absolutely nonsense business like that, because that's how much VC capital had changed the dynamic of how you start your business. Now, if the Fed rate is above zero, which at that time it was zero, so basically free money for large liquidity providers, now things change in an ecosystem where you're talking 3, 5, 6%, depending on how crazy it goes. And, you know, can you support this lunacy anymore? Or do you actually have to be profitable when you start? And what's really interesting is if you look actually even in the tech space, a lot of the successful startups now, they're using all the infrastructure that was built during those days, you know, new cloud systems of all stripes and colors. You know, Ramon and I use Airtable for almost everything, right? So kind of back end small startup infrastructure like that allows you to actually focus on the value proposition to the customer first. And I think you're going to see a return to, are we actually providing value to the customer rather than can we buy their affinity for a short period of time until we push out the existing competition? So yeah, absolutely good point.
Yeah,
you brought a really good point, Mike. I think you're right on. Like, yeah, the backing money allowed them to offer the service at a very low cost because it was convenient for the end user. And I was using it because it's so convenient because I didn't need to wait for a taxi, and it wasn't that much of an expense. So you were just gonna get a car, immediately get a ride. And it's the same for Airbnb and all of the apps as a service where you can get anything you want. But as the novelty wears off on those services, you find that they get regulated as well, and there's a lot more scrutiny. And I'm not saying that that's the reason they put hike the prices. I'm just putting out there that there's actually a lot of things that are going to happen in the drone industry as well, where yes, drone deliveries are novel right now, and there's like a lot of services happening right now. But like Estani was saying, yes, they're cheap right now. But at some point, there's going to be more scrutiny behind that. There's going to be certification that you need to do. You're going to have to be airworthiness, and there's going to be a lot more happening in regulation that it's going to hike the cost of that service, and it's going to make it more difficult for anyone to do it. So there might be a lot of companies right now, but ultimately there's going to be like just a few that are going to really do it well and maybe offer it as a service for others. And like maybe my company offers drone delivery, but on the back end, there's maybe another one that is actually doing the last mile delivery for me. But I am the one that is actually offering the drones out there. Let's put it as an example. Maybe I'm using Amazon for fulfillment, and Amazon is using the drone delivery for me. And my company is just using Amazon for that delivery. So I fully expect this to right now be like Wild Wild West, a lot of companies offering the service, but at some point it's going to go back to big companies that can afford regulation and can afford lobbying, can afford actually the legal fees behind all of this infrastructure. Because as we're all seeing right now, regulation and airspace acquisition and getting able to access it, it's right now where the conversation is. And I don't think that we're really focusing too much on it enough that we're actually seeing the problems that are going to be happening soon.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the story of the drone industry, right? get ahead of our skis a little bit, but you know, that's also part of advancing technology. So I would say there's been Toni will get right to you. I'll finish the sentence. I would say there's actually been some refocusing on what is more workable among the drone startups. Toni, you want to chime in?
Oh, yeah. So I wrote down some notes that I was thinking while we were chatting about this. So let's talk about Uber for a hot second.
Mm-hmm. You
know, Uber has no brand continuity, and it never really did. It doesn't have, you know, it has a very weird bait and switch type of buy. You don't really know what you're getting. So people are buying convenience and they're buying price. So once we lose the price and we lose the convenience because we're losing, we're in different ecosystems. And by I mean use the convenience. For instance, you check in at a hotel, you can't get your Uber at the front of the hotel. You have to now go all the way to the back of the hotel, wait, and then try to wait for your Uber. So it's not as convenient as it used to be. So we've lost convenience. You never know what kind of car you're getting in, where you're going, what it looks like. So there's quality. A lot of other, the quality. There's a lot of other parts, I feel like, business-wise, having nothing to do with the technology part of it, that are going into this, that are kind of just starting to tank what our expectations were. So to me, I agree with everything that's being said here, but basically at the end of the day, there's no repercussions for bad business. It's not like I'm not going to use Verizon again. I'm not going to use Uber again. Yes, you are. Yeah. It's kind of like we're almost stuck in that minutia of they got us, they baited us in, they got us comfortable with it. Now they're switching it out. And we see that a lot when it comes to disruptive technologies throughout the years. So just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, so the penalty might be less on Uber, but actually on the next set of startups, right? Like Uber becomes Verizon, right, and we just have to tolerate it, or like the cable company. And like you could hear them when you talk with customer support, the glee that they're taking in actually destroying your day. Yeah. I'm sure that'll be the next evolution of Uber. But then, the penalty is, do people pick up the next piece of tech? And, even the tech press lately is for negative. It's like, which business are you in? Because they used to just be wanton cheerleaders of everything, no matter how stupid it was. And now it's like, no matter how good it is, we hate it. So there might be a shift in, I guess, customer acceptance.
And I think the one thing that we haven't talked about is we're talking about it from the end user perspective, but what about the workers? Like, I think that's the biggest thing right here.
True.
Like, they're not getting compensated as good as they were before, and now they have to work extra hours. There's so many of them right now, and they don't protect them at all. They're like freelancers, and that's a huge problem too, and that's causing a lot of problems with perception to the brand as well.
Well, that economically is going to fall apart, right? Because that's kind of going to be it's going to be one of the hinges for regulation, right? Because some of these models were built on a falsehood of that we no longer had to adhere to labor laws. And now they're reaching at such a scale that, the Department of Labor is looking at it as like, well, just because you called it something else doesn't mean that in action, because this person is working X amount of hours, this is their primary source of income, or the majority of your freelancers are working more than 40 hours a week to actually create a sustainable income. Now we're going to come down and regulate you. Now we actually know what the boundaries of your business are because they're operating at such a scale that they're understandable, and the party's over. So the problem is that filters down to us, the consumer, and then it might break the economic model. So if it's not, what Toni was saying, where basically Uber gets a free ride, pun intended, because we still need it for convenience. But if the economics of that convenience break, where it becomes no different than a black car prior to the Uber revolution, then suddenly I might go with the black car provider, because I can speak to somebody on a phone, I could get the customer service, and I'm paying a premium price anyway, right? So if Uber can't back that up, then things might change. So we got
guess what, Mike? The black drivers are like they're the same people that are on Uber already, so they're just going to give you the same service for cheaper.
Yeah. How many times have you had an Uber driver say, "Hey, by the way, if you want to call me up personally," I'm gonna start taking them up on it. So we got 2 comments from the chat, and then we're gonna move on to our last article. So random LinkedIn user, if your privacy settings are set a certain way, I can't see your name. Sorry about that. Great conversation and insightful as we look at logistics and costs of door-to-door deliveries. What is everyone's thoughts that delivery industries will foot the bill to drive down costs, since they are already having a high overhead cost? Will it be lower than standard delivery when we pile on regulations, infrastructure, etc. on top of it? Anybody, free run. Who wants to take it?
I'm going to say no to that question, as I'm sure my colleagues here will as well. Unfortunately, nothing that we're doing here is going to be less expensive in the short term, especially while we're ramping up. So if people are looking for that, I really think they need to start selling convenience. You're going to be selling the convenience, and it's not so much that last mile. It is, but it's not. You know, you look at places where I live here in Arizona. When I lived in New Jersey, drone delivery, not really super necessary. You're in Arizona, yeah, it could take 20 minutes for somebody to get up the mountain to get down to the store, or 30 minutes. So it's just a different type of thing. So I feel like it's going to be regionally addressed. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, the costs are sometime at some point physical. What were we gonna say, Sally?
And, you know, the low costs really do make me nervous right now. It's hard to dislike something when it's free or cheap. And even you think $4 to get your Walmart stuff delivered to your house. I would pay $4 purely for the entertainment value of watching a drone fly to my backyard. That it's hard to argue that $4 is too expensive, or even free in some cases is too expensive. And, you know, I do really get nervous that we're training people that you can have a bag of chips delivered and a free entertainment for $4. And so, you know, I do kind of wonder if, you know, in some ways, maybe Walmart is testing with a bag of chips right now just to sort of sort out the bugs.
Figure it out.
But, you know, I think in the end, it's going to be something like a prescription where, you know, it's an elderly person who can't drive and they live by themselves, and they need the prescription. So you know what? They will pay a $30 delivery fee because a prescription is non-negotiable. But I really do wonder how viable getting your chips delivered via drone is going to be in the long term.
I'm going to say probably not. I mean, I've always had that stance, but I like to take the pessimistic side, so I'm you know, happily surprised when we do something better. And we got one more question. Are we looking at an Instacart-like model or UPS FedEx? More like, so in the case of DroneUp and Walmart, and actually I think Zipline's working with them too, I would imagine it's more like an Instacart model, right? But there's actually plenty of room for middle mile UPS FedEx to kind of fill in the gaps for kind of bigger cargo. And, you know, AAM, which is Advanced Air Mobility, you're probably going to see some advancement in that in the next couple of years that fill up the middle mile, because there's already infrastructure. And that's actually kind of the equation that DroneUp, as I heard Mike Blades less than 2 weeks ago talk about it, was the idea that they have physical locations. So the infrastructure is basically a couple spaces in the parking lot, and they could set up. So wherever you can have existing infrastructure, you'll probably see faster scaling rather than people who have to start it from scratch.
And that's why Walmart's seen so much success also, is they already have the warehouse is just the literal Walmart store in every city, and they have the parking lot to take off as well.
Yeah, and there's actually more of them than Amazon warehouse spaces. So that's an interesting leg up that they were able to figure out. And that actually goes for another trend that we don't have too much time to discuss, is that existing legacy companies are now taking on tech talent, and being technology first is no longer an advantage that puts you in this, you know, bubble. Almost every company has access and infrastructure for software developers now, which wasn't the case 15, 20 years ago. So you might see legacy companies who don't have to rely on venture capital, right, will be highly successful on all these fronts because they have a bank, they have endowments, basically. So our last article actually kind of nicely ties all of this together. Thank you so much. Great guests today. That's why we've had such great conversations. So this one's Ramon. And do you want to talk about what Zipline's doing? Fan favorite among the drone industry?
Yeah, definitely. So this fits nicely with the conversation we were having. So Zipline's getting air care certification by the FAA. And actually, while I read the article and I read the press release, I actually didn't realize what this actually meant. Now that before the stream started, Toni was actually talking about what it actually meant, and I actually opened my eyes to what is happening here. So I thought this was more of a certification for the aircraft, but it isn't, right, Toni?
No, it's not. So
I'm
you can jump in. I'll quiet. Sorry.
No, no worries, no worries. I was actually gonna put the ball in your court in a little bit. So this is about drone delivery and Zipline. For those of you who don't know, have been doing delivery in Africa for a long time now, and they've been testing their systems, and they are essentially doing deliveries every 4 minutes, and that's amazing. And they're doing like COVID vaccines, blood delivery, and any type of medicine they need from one location to another, especially to not easily accessible regions within Africa. And they're moving their operation to the US now, and they just went through certification to get air carrier certified by the FAA. So what does that actually mean, Toni?
So from what I understand it as meaning as my company owns a Part 135 certificate, an FAA Part 135. So what that means is that we're authorized by the government to fly people for hire, charter. So I believe that Zipline and some of these other companies, Joby, they are getting their 135 certificate. They're not getting it with the understanding that the FAA says, yes, here you go, here's your aircraft certified. They're getting the certification of the certificate to say, at some point, we're going to certify, hopefully, your aircraft, and then we will be able to fly it. Of course, they're starting out with crewed aircraft. So in this situation, and I believe in both situations of the 135s, I'm not 100% versed, but I believe that they added an SR-22, which is a Cirrus aircraft, a little four-seater single-engine aircraft that they got approved to put on their certificate. So that now gives them a legal certificate to be able to fly for profit, for hire. Then the certification process will now begin for the FAA to certify a new aircraft type. For instance, a Learjet, a Gulfstream, those are aircraft that are already certified by the FAA. So now they're going to certify individually Zipline, Joby, eVair Mobility, whichever ones are putting in for their 135. And as I believe, they're going to be flying with one crewed airman and then eventually autonomous.
So just thinking about somebody, at least two of us know, Chris Anderson. He was pushing for type certification as one of the major points of advancement for the drone industry, because once something's type certified, if you build to that spec, you can reuse it, right? Or you can...
Yes, you just have to go through differences trainings and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's it. Once they get their original done, they get their original aircraft certified, then they can just go ahead and advance on different types after that.
So I thought by now we would have seen a host of type certifications for drones, and nothing yet, right? Anything?
I mean, the FAA everybody has negative things to say about the FAA. I'm not one of them because I think that the FAA has their hands full. Don't forget, they're already dealing with an overpopulated manned aviation system that is, you hear about it all the time, practically crashing down, and we've got all this problem with the airspace. So they're dealing with that. Now we're dealing with everybody and their mothers coming out saying, we need all these new airplanes certified. Well, we can't just throw them up in the air. We have to go through the process of certifying an airplane, and that takes a long time. And it takes people to do that. So we need to actually, and I know the FAA right now, I was just in a meeting in Washington last week, they are amping up. They're adding more people to their UAS division. They're going as fast as they can. So maybe not as fast as they can, but they're doing what they can do. And there's people that are very, very passionate in that organization to see this through. So I'm a believer in the process. I'm an aviator. I've seen the process that they've been through for a long time. And I've seen change come across through the FAA. And I believe that they will be able to get the job done with our cooperation, all of us.
Yeah, the thing to remember with the FAA is that they have a history that they have to overcome, right? They've been doing a fine job with great statistics managing manned aircraft or crewed aircraft, and nobody got promoted at the FAA for putting more things in the sky, right? So
That's
drones
right.
actually do cause an issue for that, why the Part 135 kind of I don't want to call it a loophole, but in terms of the FAA being able to manage putting automated systems into the sky, or these new kind of smaller UAS into the sky, that's an easier avenue for them to do so than to try and absorb the entirety of every drone pilot who could pick up a DJI off the shelf, or a Pixhawk type drone off the shelf, that the scale and volume of that is a lot scarier, right? So there's that.
Well, you're talking about that and AAM, right? Two different things now.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about how are they gonna, because ultimately it's gonna be managed under one universal traffic management system when it comes down to it. So, but if they can start with AAM and Part 135 style drones, that's actually, it just benefits the smaller drones down the line anyway.
I agree.
And it's an easier kind of foothold for them to understand, and there's less people that they have to talk to make it work. On the other side, if I'm going to bring up the other side of the argument, is like, well, that's not fair, because that becomes only the biggest players are able to do this anyway, and that kind of undermines the principle of the drone revolution or the small UAS revolution.
Or if you look at the principles, our airlines are the ones who have been paying so far to keep the airspace of where they are, because they're the ones that are using it, right? So that's really the same situation.
Yeah.
The people that have the money are going to be pulling all of the, let's use UTM, on the traffic, unmanned traffic management. That's a huge thing that everyone's studying. NASA, people that own companies, commercial drone users and AAM users are working towards that UTM. That's just a little tiny space in what needs to happen in order to pull this together. So yes, I do believe the AAM players are going to be the ones that are carving the airspace for the rest of the everyone to use. That's just how it is. They have the money to do it. They have the lobbying to do it. They have the voice to do it. And the collaboration is necessary from everyone. And anyone that you talk to in this industry will tell you, including the FAA, please come to us, collaborate with us, help us get through this. We want to be able to get this moving.
So Sally, you've been around since 2013 with me. That's probably around the time I got in, maybe a year later. So how do you think the conversation has shifted from kind of those smaller players being the focus to now, it's Ziplines and Google Wing and so on, and Drone Up or Volatus Aero Group, who are getting kind of all the headlines about it?
I feel really conflicted about this because, in a lot of ways, we see this often when the FAA puts together some sort of group, a committee, and it's always the big players on the committee. And then some of these smaller companies say, well, we don't have the resources to do this. We're the little guys. We don't have some VP of policy and a team of 5 lawyers the way some of these bigger companies do. It is really unfortunate that some of these small startups can't really have a voice. But at the same time, as we said, the money is at these bigger players. And if we want to get stuff done, we also need the bigger players that have the money and the resources to do it. And, do you want a small startup that has half of a person working as their legal team, kind of making decisions? Or do you want to default to a company that has, a huge team of lawyers? And so I think it's there's pros and there's cons. And, the sad reality is sometimes little guys can't participate, but we also want the money to actually get stuff done. I really don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I just hope that we don't close the door on the little guy, right? So there might be some realities of business that the little guy just has to accept, that you're never going to have a director of policy, and therefore your voice is going to be limited to what you can post on an NPRM, right? But at least that option is there. There is, forms in the way that this process works that allows you to participate. But it's not the same as having a full-time lobbyist. But also, sometimes that means you have to find alignment with these larger companies or figure out a way to navigate around them for your business. So I have a comment from the chat. Again, private LinkedIn user. Professor at Embry-Riddle, Florida, was given the task of monitoring a specific location over a few-month period and came out with an amazing data set showing 400,000 plus UAS flights, and they were just DJI. So the FAA has a huge job in protecting our airspace. Yes. So 400,000 flights. I mean, there is something comforting on one level. Those flights didn't conflict with existing crewed air traffic, so that we know of anyway. So as big as that problem is to digest and then create a system that can handle all of that, at least nothing bad has happened yet. If anything, that's kind of like why can't we move faster? Why isn't this as much of a priority if there's 400,000 flights? I think we all want to see things move as fast as possible, and the FAA does know what it's doing in terms of keeping the airspace safe based on its history. But at some point they do have to move, or else that 400,000 becomes 1.2 million, and suddenly it's not safe no matter what you do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to know how many of those 400,000 flights were consumer drones, like just selfie drones and like for recreation, versus end users actually flying them for work. And I think that would be an even more interesting number over those repeated flights versus just one-off that happened during that time frame.
And how much is the app ecosystem with geofencing actually just controlling the actual danger, right? So yes, a user can override that and very easily can hack around that with some knowledge.
Well, you brought a good point. The geofence is actually limiting in one airspace, but it's actually in high density areas, moving everyone to fly in this like tiny space where you can actually fly. So it's moving that problem somewhere else. It's not actually taking it away. So it actually helps, but it's moving it to another region where you're going to get more congestion.
Yeah, so the chat is saying those were all line of sight and DJI. So that those are some controlling factors.
I do want to add that we do have a voice here, you guys. We have, you can get involved. You don't have to necessarily be a big player to get involved. I'm not a big player, but I have a big voice because I've put myself in situations. I've joined certain organizations, volunteered. I speak like we all do at, at these conventions and stuff like that. And I think that's part of what we could do is get our voice heard. Every single group that I'm in, a closed-door group, there's never been somebody from the FAA that's not sitting there going, we need your help. And to me, like that's huge to me. I don't care if people are saying, oh, they're this, they're that. I've worked with the FAA for years, and they've helped keep our operations safe. Hundreds and thousands of people I've flown personally, privately, and they're safe. So at the end of the day, they're looking for help. They're looking for collaboration. And us sitting here throwing stones is not helping. What's helping is getting these, maybe it's the 8 players that are saying, we have the money that can do the testing. Here you go, NASA, test the airspace, get the UTM moving, let's do this. And that's good for the rest of the ecosystem. So to me, collaboration, positivity, collaboration. That's what I say all day.
And Congress has some weight to bear too, so you could cast your vote too. That
you
does
can be
make
heard.
a difference in terms of which issues. It's so hard because these are nuanced issues to get them to the top because they don't curdle the blood the same way that others do. But it's still important to let because I remember Cory Booker like early on tried to become a champion. Maybe it's because Amazon was pushing him on some level, wanted to, invest in New Jersey and somehow. But regardless, now, if Cory Booker is pro-drone, write to him. There's other ways to have influence, even through the outside of the regular paths. You got to attack it from all angles if you want to get it done.
And your comments are very timely. Just right now we've had in 2022 the BVLOS Art Committee came out with their final report, and I think that came out earlier this year. And now we are in the window where people can submit their public comments. And actually, if you're listening to this live today on Monday, July 11th, this is the last day that you can apply to speak live at the next meeting. And so I do really appreciate that the FAA is giving any normal person like you or I a chance to speak up in that meeting. Even if you weren't invited to be on the ARC, you can still have your voice heard.
Yeah, if you're upset about something, find a way to articulate your argument and find a forum in which you could be heard. There are plenty that happen throughout the year, and usually the person you need to talk to is only 1 or 2 connections away. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Toni, Sally, Ramon. I knew this was going to be a lot of fun. Thank you to Dawn, who's our normal other co-host for actually taking some time off. I've never seen Dawn ever take time off, so a big congrats to her for doing so. We got some other stuff coming up this week. Tomorrow on Full Tilt, that's our technology leadership talks. We have Ed Bukas from Vodix. He's going to be talking with Dawn about his history. That's a really good interview, I'm sure. Then on Dawn of Drones on Wednesday, normal time, so that's 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We have Kevin Price from AccuCode. On Thursday, we have Drone Law Connections at 1 p.m. on Clubhouse, and that has Brent McLaughlin and Karen DeMeo from Aero DeMeo. So Brent McLaughlin is from Azalon Group. Then on next Monday, we're happy to have David Heath, and he's from PA Drone Association. And then we also have Ryan Johnston from Applied Aeronautics. They're going to be on Full Crew joining Dawn and I again. And finally, next Tuesday on Twitter Spaces, we have Cameron Schell from Dragonfly and Ben Gross from Elsight. So quite a packed schedule over the next 7 days. Thank you again for my guests to join us. Just want to say we've got 2 more comments from the chat. I want to call them out. Meg Anand, that's actually from Applied Aeronautics, so she's another person from the team there. Great conversation. Thank you for tuning in, Meg. And our private LinkedIn user, send an email 9-FAA-UAS-BVLOS@FAA.gov requesting to make oral comments for the July 26th BVLOS ARC public meeting. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat and giving people another opportunity to participate. So that's it for this episode, and we are out here.